This is Greg Gifford, and this is SEO in 2025.
Greg, what's your number one SEO tip for 2025?
So my number one SEO tip for 2025 is to not forget the basics. I feel like everyone has tended to really get distracted, and maybe it's not really a distraction, but they pay more attention to algorithm updates or Google document leaks or ways to use AI to make their job more efficient or write content. Everybody's thinking about all of these new things to the detriment of just handling the basics. And sure, there have been some algorithm updates, but the basics of SEO, let's create awesome content that answers customers' questions and then optimize it the right way so that Google can quickly and easily tell what it's about. Still the vast majority of what we need to do if we want to get visibility. And I think a lot of people are looking for more complex hacks or quick silver bullets. And if you just grind the basics, you're still going to get great results.
And there he was presuming my next question and answering it as well, which was going to be, what are the basics? But you started off with talking about creating content to answer people's questions. So
Yeah.
Is that where you start out? Is that more important than tweaking technical SEO?
It's funny. Jono and Alderson and I have kind of gotten into it on Twitter with some other people who talk about, well, you've got to have faster page speeds and core web vitals and all these things. And yeah, I mean, technical SEO, definitely important, but I wouldn't spend any time on technical SEO if I don't have the right content there in the first place. And I think that's what a lot of people, you lose the forest for the trees. You're so worried about all these other things and all the different experts that you're following. And then you kind of spend more time doing these other more advanced things, which would make a difference if you had the content in the first place. But most people, they're just lacking quality content. And I think a lot of people lose that because even people that have been doing it for a long time kind of lose that and start going after these more advanced things. And sure, it sounds cool to be really good at technical SEO and get into all the nerdy bits, but none of that's going to matter if you don't have good content in the first place.
Okay, so good content is the chicken. Technical SEO is the egg, yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Why are the basics still the most important part of what an SEO does?
I think the basics are the most important part because you can't do any of the other stuff if you don't have the basics in place. You got to have a website. You got to have content on that website, but it has to be good content that answers customers' questions. And then it's got to be optimized the right way. And then you've got to then it gets a little more advanced with like architecture and internal linking and more of the technical SEO stuff that you'd get more advanced with. But if you don't have a well-constructed website with good content, I feel like you're just wasting time with everything else. If you've got a 5-page website and you're trying to rank for 100 different phrases and you're worried about your core web vitals and your page speed and hreflang and all of these other things, but you've got 5 pages of crappy content, none of that other stuff's going to matter. Obviously, that's oversimplified because nobody's going to have a 5-page website and worry about hreflang issues. But you know what I mean? It's more about people have gotten so into SEO and all of the different technical bits and coding bits and content planning and content marketing and all the other things that you can do. And they forget the really simple concept of you've got to have the answers to customers' questions on your site. Lately, when I've been talking about this, both with potential clients and at conferences, I talk about giving the website what we call the noob test. Because business owners and marketers are intimately familiar with the website that they're doing SEO on and the business and what it's about. So things are there and they make sense to them, but what would an absolute noob think on that website? Somebody that's never bought that product or service before and knows nothing about that process of buying it or nothing about the product or service. Could they come to your website and find all the answers that they need to feel comfortable enough to submit their information through a chat or a text or a lead form or a phone call? If they're calling you because they need to ask more questions, then that means the site's not good enough. Or if they land on your site and they just don't feel comfortable because they don't get the answers they need, they're going to go find those answers somewhere else. And now they're off your website, and it's going to be a lot harder to get them to come back and convert. So I think that's really kind of the core problem is SEOs think the site's great, but if you really look at it through the lens of an absolute noob, you realize that sure, the information's all there, but if you don't know that it's 5 levels deep on some submenu and then 3 contextual links to get to the answer, sure, the answer's there, but could a normal person that doesn't know anything find it easily? Probably not. Then that means back to the basics. Let's make it an easy website experience for potential customers that answers their questions, and then everything else kind of comes after.
So quick twofold question. Is it likely that anything will change about the basics over the next few years? And part 2, has anything changed about the basics recently?
Yeah, I mean, recently, for sure, we have the explosion of AI-generated content, which has, I think, made some people, they have to worry less about content. But in general, people don't realize that these large language models aren't actually intelligent. They don't actually know what they're saying, and they're just predicting words. And obviously, most of the people that are listening to this are going to be in the SEO industry, or reading the book later will be in the SEO industry, and they all know that. But the general public thinks that AI is actually thinking and intelligent and writing this content. And so I think a lot of people are taking the AI shortcut for content or price saving shortcut for content and ending up with bad content. Or they're not thinking about how to organize the content. They're just putting all of this AI word vomit on the website and then moving on to the technical stuff. But again, if you do the noob test and someone that knows nothing about that product or service comes to the website, they're not going to find the answers they need, or they're going to be turned off by the weird AI phrasing. And then it still becomes a problem. So it still all comes back to, if you don't have quality content on your site, really nothing else is going to matter. I think the helpful content update has been interesting. They've had these updates where things have tanked and then come back, and other things have come back and then tanked. The clients that we work with haven't really been affected by that. I think potentially AI overviews could really shake things up. But again, that's shaking up how search results are presented, not what it takes to show up in search results. The AI overviews are going to come from the AI going out and checking the content or looking at Google's index, depending on how they're setting it all up or which platform you're using. But you still have to have the content for the AI systems to discover your content to return you as an AI result. So I feel like, I've been doing this for a long time. It's been almost 20 years I've been doing SEO stuff, and sure, lots of stuff has changed algorithmically and everywhere else, but even back then, it was still about basic marketing. Let's just answer the questions that customers have, and that will bring customers to us. And I think a lot of people have lost that over the years, because years ago it was, let's put some keywords on the page and you're going to show up for those keywords. It's a lot more complex now, but it still comes back to, you have to have the content.
Is there ever a good reason, a good way of using AI to create content?
Yeah, I think for sure. We've started using AI for content for our clients for certain types of content. Like we have a lot of healthcare and a lot of attorneys and a lot of car dealers where you have to be careful because you have compliance issues. If we're talking about a car and the AI writes something and it lists the mileage of the car and it's 1 mile off from the official mileage, they can get a lot of trouble with the manufacturer. So you have to kind of fact check. Healthcare, you for sure don't want to have anything incorrect. Legal, you don't want anything that's legally incorrect, but it's all local SEO that we do. And so we do have periodically these local informational posts where it's just a blog post about the local area that isn't purchase intent content, but it's content that's meant to get the website to show up when people aren't looking for that product or service and they're just looking for information about the area. So it functions like a billboard. It gets eyeballs on the website pre-purchase funnel. And so that content we've experimented using AI. And the caveat though is we have an editing service that we use the AI to write the content, and then we send it to the editing service so that human editors are fact checking and grammar and spell checking. And they're also removing all of the goofy language that the AI systems use. Like they'll always start at the beginning and say, let's delve into this topic. And like no human uses delve unless you're playing D&D, right? And then you've got at the end, it will always have the last paragraph will say, and in conclusion. So you got to clean up the obvious AI jargon that's always thrown in there.
So is there software or another AI that you can use to clean up AI, or do you have to have a human to do that?
And I'm sure there are people building that stuff right now, but we still feel like to have the quality of the content that you really want, you still have to have that human layer. It's the same thing of, sure, there are some people that would just go vomit out a blog post and post it on the site without really editing it, but most companies that use a quality agency or that have their own internal content teams or marketing teams, you're going to have the standard process of research, write, send off to an editor, then publish, then optimize. You still have that human editor in there when you're writing it manually. So you still need it in there when you're doing it with AI. It's just now you're not spending all the time researching and writing because it just spits out by the AI, but you still give it to the human editors to fix it. And when we do that, we feel like it's good quality content for the purpose that it's designed for. I don't think that the AI tools are there yet. We have been testing for other types of content, but we're not satisfied with the level of content yet. I think it's going to get there pretty quickly, especially as you can now kind of train your own models and get it to be a little bit more in a specific voice and have specific information in there. I think for us, though, we're not really there yet for anything that's not pretty simple general information.
So the other part of what you mentioned at the beginning was don't get distracted by algorithm updates. Shouldn't we keep track of algorithm updates and perhaps even update our tactics accordingly?
Yeah, so there's definitely a reason to pay attention to them and keep track of them. But I think I said this 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago in this same interview. Or maybe it was last year, I don't know. There's a big difference between people that track the algorithms and pay attention to what's there in case they do need to adjust their strategy, and people that are algorithm chasers, where every time there's an algorithm update, you have to scramble to fix all the sites that you had that tanked. And then every time there's another major update, your sites tank and you have to come back because you're not, I feel like those type of people are not doing quote unquote legitimate marketing. They're trying the shortcuts. They're doing every little hacky thing that they can get results really quickly for. So, the white hat, black hat line, they're really pushing the gray to get results quickly. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. There's definitely a lot of people out there that do it and do it well, and they're successful with it. But we tend to take a little bit more conservative view for the work that we do with our clients. Even the clients that want to be really aggressive, we don't want to do anything today that if Google rolls out an update a month from now or 2 months from now or 6 months from now, completely tanks all the effort that has been put in. And now that site doesn't show up in search results. And then you have to go scramble and figure out why specifically that site tanked and fix those things. And hopefully that site shows up again. And it's not like the latest helpful content update things that have been happening where sites will tank and everybody's like, okay, clearly something's wrong with this update because all these crappy sites show up top and the sites that should be ranking show up really low. And then you gotta, even though you fix the problems, you swing back 6 months later with the next helpful content update and suddenly things come back. Or I saw a thing that Cyrus put on Twitter the other day that was like, Google comes and says, oh, you got hit by the helpful content update. You need to make your site better. And the site owner goes, wait, what? And they don't do anything. And then they get hit by another update. And it's like, make your site better and more friendlier. Here's some suggestions. And the site owner's like, what? Wait, what? Then the new helpful content rolls out and Google's like, hey, congratulations, you fixed everything. And you're showing up again. And the site owner says, but I haven't changed anything on my website. And I think that's the situation a lot of people are in where they're not quite sure what they did or what's going on. But that's why we tend to try to play a little more conservatively and try to predict based on what we've tracked with past algorithm updates, try to predict what might happen in the future and not stray too far into that gray area that might get results right now, but isn't sustainable over a year or two period.
So you've been known as a local SEO expert. expert in lots of areas of SEO, but certainly a local SEO expert. Does your focusing on the basics advice apply to different types of websites, large e-commerce websites, other types of websites online as well?
Yeah, for sure. It doesn't have to be just a local focus on the website. It could be e-commerce. It could be, whatever. It could be purely informational. It could be a news site. It still really all comes down to the basics. Now, with local SEO, the basics also includes your Google business profile, which is not related to your website, and e-commerce sites don't have to worry about, but a lot of people ignore the basics on the Google business profile as well. They'll pick one category when there might be 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 categories that apply. They'll load the photos in one time and then never touch them again. We're finishing up a big 2.5-year project of studying like 8,000 Google business profiles across multiple verticals. And the average last photo upload date by owner. So, you can upload a photo along with a review, or you can just be at a business and upload a photo and tag the business, and it goes to the Google business profile image gallery. But you can see in that gallery which photos came from the public, which photos came from the business owner. The average last photo uploaded by a business owner is like 718 days. So more than 2 years of time, maybe not quite 2 years. My math, I'm not great at math because I use spreadsheets way too often, but definitely way more than a year. And businesses aren't updating their photos. Businesses, they'll change their hours of operation and not update it. So it's making sure the right information is there to answer your customers' questions, regardless of whether it's your website or your Google business profile or the copy that you're writing in your Google ads or your Facebook page or your Yelp profile or whatever it might be. It's having the right information there. And it's pretty shocking how often people get it wrong.
If an SEO is struggling for time, what should they stop doing right now so they can spend more time focusing on the basics in 2025?
They should stop doing all of the work that they're doing on the website and watch my video series to learn how to be better at SEO. I'm kidding. I would say if you're strapped for time, pause for an hour or two at the beginning of the week. So you've had some time off over the weekend. Take some time on Monday and look at what you're doing. A lot of SEOs, besides ignoring the basics, they fall into this rhythm, and you've got the same rhythm. And I'm not saying that it's to the extreme of you're just following a checklist and doing the same thing for everybody, but you fall into a rhythm and you're doing these certain things at these certain times. And if you can pause and look at what you've spent time on, and maybe even use a time tracker if you're if you're a freelancer or you're in-house, you're not going to be tracking your time, but it's helpful to track your time to see what you're spending your time on. And then you can diagnose, hey, maybe I shouldn't spend all of this time on technical because I still don't have the basic content stuff right. Or I've got this content plan that's going out over the next 3 months, but that content 3 months from now is just as important. Why am I waiting 3 months to get it there so that I've got time to do link building and I've got time to do technical optimizations that won't really matter if you don't have the content there in the first place? So a lot of people, especially if you're in-house, there is no campaign. It's just a never-ending slog of let's keep optimizing this website. I think taking the time to spend an hour or two to pause when your mind is fresh and to really consider, what are you putting effort into? Where is that effort going? You'll realize that you're spending time on things that either aren't important right now because you got to get the basics knocked out first, or you're spending an inordinate amount of time on things that are less important. Maybe you're spending a lot of time worrying about, your Google business profile, but you should spend more time worrying about links or whatever it would be. And it's hard to give a universal answer that says, no matter what, stop doing these other things and write more content or do more link building, because it's going to be different for every site that you're working on. If you're in-house, you just got one site, so it's a little easier. If you're agency or freelance, you got to look at the bulk of your clients that you're working with, and that thing that you need to stop doing may be different for this one site over here than it is for another site over here. It's taking a step back and not be in that mental slog of I'm just working and working and working, and actually thinking intentionally about what you're doing and what impact it'll have. I think that's by far more valuable than to just keep trucking and doing the same thing without really considering what would have a bigger impact in the long run.
Where can people find your video series, Greg?
It's at searchlabdigital.com on our blog. You can follow SearchLab on LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. It gets posted in all of those spots. You can also follow me on Twitter or LinkedIn, and I share links there as well.
Greg Gifford is Chief Operating Officer at SearchLab Digital, and you can find him over at searchlabdigital.com. Greg, thanks so much for being part of SEO in 2025.
Happy to be here. This is like, I'm looking down here. I think this is my 4th year in a row because I've got 3 other books down there for past years.
It is. If it was more than 4, it wasn't me. Thank you, Greg. I've been your host, David Bain. Get your copy of SEO in 2025, the book, over at SEOin2025.com.